country do you live in? United Kingdom? Australia? America? Well, I'm going to be concerning America, specifically about the American Revolution. Hooray, the beautiful war that allowed us to secure independence and beat the disgusting Brits, I guess. Now, that is an interesting story and it boosts morale, but really, don't look at the American Revolution. That's not what it is. We just like making up stories so that, we don't fall depressed because our generals and our first president was terrible general and terrible president at the same time. And here is everything that is terrible about the American Revolution. Now, first of all, you probably already understand about the Civil War. The American Civil War is a good other war that you can use to compare with the American Revolution. Now, the Civil War, the Union, just imagine what the Union was feeling when the South seceded. Well, that's what the British are feeling. You might believe that the Confederates were disgusting devils who are vampires and drink blood and killed Abraham Lincoln's mother like what they did in the movie. Well, that's what the British felt about the Americans, or the colonists, if you were speaking at the time. And really, they were not just patriotic Saint Patriots of the patriotic universe. No, not that. They were more of idiots who did not want to pay taxes, even if their taxes were extremely low, actually. Yeah, it's very surprising to know that the average British citizen had to pay more taxes than the Americans. And the Americans were like, I need to spend 0.5 cents to pay taxes? That's so expensive. Let's start a revolution. And that ended up ending an empire and also killing a lot of innocent people. They weren't actually that innocent. Some of them liked enslaving people, and some of them liked calling themselves, quote unquote, enslaved by the empire. Meanwhile, all the American slaves are like, yeah, you know what being a slave is like. Really. So yeah, they like comparing themselves to slaves. Wait, hold on. Oh. Oh, dang it. That's what they said in the Civil War too. So yeah, now you can see like the line between the Civil War and a revolution is kind of thin. Really thin. I guess there's no boundary at all. They're just the same thing. For the Confederates, they were having a revolution, and everybody else was like, Civil War, hooray! Now at this time, slavery was a big issue. Now, have you ever seen that kids' TV show called Liberty Kids? I used to watch it. It's not historically accurate. I wonder why my sister told me to watch it, because it is quote-unquote history. But now, because I know real history, I know that that's wrong. You can tell the difference between the British and the Americans. The British enslaves the black people. Even the soldiers, they tortured them to death. And for the Americans, the blacks were treated as equally as possible. If that was true, then they would not have had a civil war. Because, they never had a civil war. Just wait a few more years, then the Civil War will come. Yeah. And, of course, this is not real. Actually, British, if you were a slave and you wanted to be free, it is better to be British than American, because all the black soldiers serving for the Americans George Washington was like, "Thank you, sir, for giving your service and nearly sacrificing yourself for our nation. Thank you, Washington, sir. Okay? And as a reward, you will have the honor of helping America become America, and we're sending you back into slavery." That's not a good award, Washington. Now, another thing that you might know about the slave problem was that if you served for the British and you were a slave, then you were probably going to be set free, which is pretty crazy, actually. Like, the tax-hating patriots hated freedom. They liked freedom for those who were worthy of God, and they liked enslaving everybody who was savage. Hey, so just to let you know, when I talk about history, especially at this time when racism is a big thing, you're gonna hear the word savage for a long time. I know that, but it's really common because savage is anybody who does not believe in Jesus, which kind I think includes Jews. And also, Jesus was not a white man. Sorry, Europe, you guys are too racist to believe that. Now, in order to more understand about the American Revolution, you need to go up to the general, Mr. George Washington, the guy who kind of started the entire situation in the first place. George Washington, he started the revolution. How? A few years before, to be more specific, 9 years before, actually like 14 years before 20 years of war. I don't know, like the timeline is pretty blurry, especially from the time where it took like 14 seconds to load a cannon. Oh yeah, 40 minutes to load a cannon. And what I saw was that George Washington, he was a British commander who had his own platoon. And he came up to a French camp and said, "Wow, what a peaceful time of peace. Would be terrible if somebody ruined it. You know what? I'm going to keep the peace. Open fire!" Thus starting the 7 Years' War. That was a pretty dumb decision, by the way. He was captured at the end, so yeah, dumb. And then something else happened, which was Britain won the war. Cool! Do you know who's broke? Britain! So they start paying taxes. And Washington is like, "How dare you pay taxes? 100% not my fault for starting the entire war in the first place. I'm not going to pay my taxes. I'm a rich guy. I can pay my taxes, but I'm just not going to. I can pay my taxes forever, but I'm not going to because it's so cheap that I don't want to pay my taxes." That's pretty dumb, by the way. Anyways, he became a general, and now many people know him for his outstanding military superiority, and he was also an idiot at strategy. Really, he fell for the same exact common trick that would always be used a few dozen million times, which was the flanking maneuver, where Washington's army would be in the middle, a decoy British army would be in the front engaging, but then one is going to flank from the side, and Washington's going to be like, I will 100% learn from this, and he never learned from it. The only time he learned from it was down in South Carolina, where he said, "How about I stop slapping myself and slap the British?" Perfect idea! And he actually slapped the British that time because he actually used okay strategy besides idiot strategy, I guess. And now we have to go through another thing. George Washington's presidency. Not part of the American Revolution. Sorry about that. that was like right next to the American Revolution, so no difference actually. Now, he was a okay general, but he was a downright terrible president. He didn't even rule properly. Like, he did serve 2 terms, but his first election, he didn't even want to become president. He was just like, well, my job is done. For this country, I am going to rest and sit until my dying days, and hopefully history will remember me for my good deeds, not to be, I don't know, president. And then somebody knocked at the door. He opened the door, and everybody in the colonies, except for the slaves, came in and was like, become president, become president. Therefore, the first election was not an election. It was, to be more specific and more actual fact, it was more of a, please be president. No, I don't want to be president. Please, no. Please, no. Please, fine. So yeah, George Washington, he doesn't want to be president, and that's why he was a bad president. God, people keep on forgetting that because he was the first one. Just because he was the first one doesn't necessarily mean he's good. He was bad. Terrible, actually. Now, finally, we have to address the problem of slavery. Once again, slavery, very common. Everybody called themselves slaves when they were slaving slaves. And at the end, Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Constitution that there will be no more slavery, and he ripped that part off and scrapped it up and chucked it into the trash can. And he was like, this is not going to start a giant civil war between some guys called the Confederates and the Union under a guy who's very tall and a cool beard. Not going to happen. It never happened. For about 20 years. And that was the American Revolution. And one thing I need to address is that we are over-romanticizing it. Like the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, that book, it's called romance because it's a romance. You can't just believe history is as it is in a romance novel. And we romanticized the American Revolution to the point where we thought of the king and the British as buffoons and the weakest military in the world compared with the fighting spirit of the Americans. And we don't focus on the truth, the ugly reality that we must cope with. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings and shattered your dreams. But yes, it was pretty cool because we did defeat the most powerful military power in the world. So I guess that thing's good.